Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Mike Force Podcast. We're ad-free. That's right, no ads. If you want to support the channel, you can. If you don't mind the traffic, the barking dog, the occasional goat or chicken in the background, well, that's why I'm making it ad-free. Not the highest of quality. I'm not in a high-end studio. I don't even have a media team. It's just me and the microphone and, my cell phone. I'm recording this on a cell phone. So, if you haven't subscribed to my Patreon, that's how you can support the channel. Patreon.com/Mike Glover, link down below. And membership is free. I do underground episodes, which are uncensored episodes for my main YouTube, Mike Glover channel, where I do a show on preparedness, current events, things going on in the world, keeping you updated and prepared. Excited about the subject matter today, mobility, loadout. We'll be doing detailed blocks of instruction on my Patreon. For example, we're focused on speedball this week. What is a speedball? I'm glad you asked. A speedball is an enhanced capability for force protection of you, your family, and your community that you're going to carry loaded out in your vehicle, in your home, or wherever you rest your head. Wherever you rest your head. We'll go over that broadly speaking, as much as we can in a 20, 30-minute episode of the Mike Force Podcast. And if you're interested in catching more detailed education, check out my Patreon, which is linked down below. A few updates. One, this Gamboa guy. I talked about this Salt Lake City man, just a dude. He was there to protest. He had an AR-15. And here's what's wild, guys. I mean, if you're not familiar, just a quick refresher. He's the guy they were going to charge with first-degree murder because a peacekeeper who was armed at a protest, who was supposed to be keeping the peace, ended up hitting Gamboa, this guy who had an AR-15, in the stomach, missed with one round, and I just found this out, 150 feet away, the victim, who was just a random protester, got struck in the head 150 feet away by a stray round that this peacekeeper shot. And they were blaming Gamboa, although he didn't shoot his AR. He just had it slung and was holding it down, pointed at the ground. Now, here's what's compelling and really scary. Witnesses, the peacekeeper who shot, and police officers, including the chief of police of Salt Lake City, put it out that he was running towards the crowd with the AR pointed at the crowd when he was engaged. Guess what? That's a complete lie. How do we know that? Because there's a video. On my Mike Glover channel, which I'd link down below, the video of that, the CCTV video perspective of that is on that channel, on that episode. You can see it for yourself. He was moving towards the protest with a gun down at the ground. Luckily for him in Utah, you could open carry, even at a protest. And I assume here, because he was just released without charges, that he told them, I was just protesting and I wanted to stand for the protest. Because people said, oh, this dude's like a fringe right-wing whatever. He is actually supporting of the protesters. The whole movement, the No Kings thing, he was on that side. And I imagine he wanted to flex up on law enforcement or ICE saying, hey, I'm a veteran, because he was a veteran. Here's my AR. And when he got shot at, his gun was pointed at the ground. And then as soon as he started receiving rounds, he didn't even defend himself. He just started running, and he was shot in the stomach. One of the 3 rounds that were shot in his direction hit him in the stomach, and then one hit this innocent protester that was 150 feet away. Hit him in the head. I imagine that's what I think I saw a witness say. But this is the world we live in. Liars. People covering their own butts, lying, can put you in prison for the rest of your life. It is a huge responsibility to carry. I imagine if you're ever in these type of situations, I'm going to be rigged with audio and video. I'm not taking any chances. And thank God, this guy's actions on the ground via the statements he made, which would have contradicted everything that everybody else said, including the police and the chief of police, he had video proof to get him out of jail. Who's going to be charged? The peacekeeper might be charged in this instance. And look, I'm all about self-defense and people protecting themselves, but the risk that you run and pulling that pistol out and perceiving anything as a threat. Like, do I think he was malice in his intent? He just wanted to gun somebody down? No, absolutely not. I think he wanted to save the day, and I think he thought there was a potential threat. But he missed. And that round killed somebody. Now, do I think he should go to prison for the rest of his life? No. But there should be some type of penalty, not just randomly down selecting a person who was involved and saying, yeah, we're going to charge you with first-degree murder, which the chief of police of Salt Lake City, he started to say that they were looking at pursuing charges of first-degree murder. Insane. Well, he's out now and wanted to update you on that. Last update, I got one additional update before we get into the episode, the meat and potatoes of this episode. I saw a Fox News video, and it was talking about Minnesota politicians and lawmakers and how they were talking about this guy that winded up killing these Minnesota politicians. He killed a husband and wife. The wife was a lawmaker or a politician in that area, and then shot another husband and wife who were critically injured. He had a manifesto and a list of all these people. For sure, crazy. For sure, violent criminal. He escaped. He ran out the back door as soon as he was confronted by police, as he was dressed as a police officer in a plastic mask, like a vinyl mask, and then winded up getting rolled up. The news article or news video was talking about how this guy was a doomsday prepper. And they were really stereotyping preppers as paranoid, crazy, radical extremists. And I'm used to that life. I mean, the FBI went after me because an analyst thought that what I was teaching was extreme. Because teaching civilians to be best prepared for the worst case scenario is somehow extreme. I had more books sold than the first, second, and third slots on the New York Times best-selling list when my book released the first week, which is called Prepared, a Manual for Surviving Worst-Case Scenarios, which I'll link down below if you want to support the channel. That book had more sold than the top 3 in the same category that week, and I didn't make the list. You know why? Because they thought I was extreme. It's not politically sound to talk about preparation because you're lumped in with radical extremists. I was banned off Facebook. AmericanContingency.com, a group that I started, a community group I started during BLM Antifa protest, was all about connecting people in their own backyards to be able to support each other. Because in some cases, like in Seattle, the police were never going to show up. They were told to not show up. So I'm used to this language, but it disappoints me. It disappoints me that we're still affiliating criminals that murder people as somehow correlated to preparedness, because that means you're anxious and scared and then likely to commit an act of violence against somebody. That stigma, that stereotype is something I've been dealing with for at least the last decade, if not my military career, the last 30 years. Because even in the military, when I would go above and beyond in us being prepared, people would be like, what are you, paranoid? A quick story, a quick caveat. In my fire base, I made my guys run drills all the time. And I remember my team sergeant saying, man, what, like, do you know something that I don't know? I'm like, what do you mean? He's, well, it seems like we're doing a lot of force protection drills in this fire base. And I said, Willie, he was my team sergeant, Willie, you can never do enough fire-based defense drills. It's like repping a muscle. You don't exercise that muscle, you'll lose it. And the last thing I want is people dying in this fire base because we're not practicing. We're not rehearsing. So I begged him every week for us to do rehearsals weekly at a minimum. We should have been doing them daily. But when you look at preparedness and what it means for you, It just means that if you're anxious, paranoid, you don't have an understanding of how things work. It just means you lack the knowledge, the technical training, and the experience. So when we replace that with knowledge, which becomes wisdom, technical skill sets, and an understanding of how it works under stress, then you become more confident. You don't become a radical, extremist criminal. You become a more prepared citizen of this country, where the first thing that you think about when somebody's breaking your house is not calling 911 and hiding underneath your desk and praying for the best or hoping for the best, because hope isn't a course of action. But instead, you have a plan. You know what you're going to do, and you've had that conversation with your family. Instead, the institutions, including the government, in this case, the Minnesota government, wants to make this prepper idea so radical because it doesn't want you to be prepared. It wants you to be reliant on the system. Self-reliance doesn't help with control and power when they're trying to seize it from you. It's why there's one particular party that goes after your Second Amendment rights. Guys, your Second Amendment right isn't just to protect and defend yourself or shoot pigeons on the weekend with your shotgun. It's to protect yourself against oppression, tyranny, radicals. And that's where I'll be in my threshold of my doorway, protecting what I love most. So I wanted to throw that out there. And let's transition now into the episode, but also a short update that relates to the episode on Tyrone Woods' pickup truck. So if you're on my Patreon, you've seen I've been selling off a few high-end items for my Tier 1 subs to include watches, pieces of kit, memorabilia, because I'm trying to rack up about $5 to $10 grand to fix Tyrone Woods, who was in GRS, former Navy SEAL, that was unfortunately and tragically killed in Benghazi, Libya in 2012. Now, I had the opportunity to buy his wrecked pickup truck that he sold right before that trip. I bought it from this gentleman in Idaho. Very thankful for that, so thank you. But I need to get it fixed. My buddy Danny picked it up, delivered it to Horseshoe Bend where he lives, and I need a shop in Horseshoe Bend or Boise or even in Idaho Falls, somewhere along the route to where I can get it worked on. I'm not asking this for free. We will pay. I will pay because I'm trying to save up enough money to get it fixed so I could pick it up and drive it to its destination. There's two options for me. One, his family. If his family wants it, I'll give it to his family. I want to know that they're going to take it, they're going to drive it and enjoy it, and that would make me happy. What would also make me happy if the family didn't want it is giving it to a charity that supports warriors. I don't care who the warrior is, law enforcement, military, guys that and gals that sacrifice it all. I want to support a nonprofit that supports their families. Often in the days or weeks post that event, we rally around families that lose these warriors. But then the months go by and we often forget about them. I'm guilty of it myself. Like, there are many people who shared, whether it was a brotherhood in special operations or people I met post my military experience, whose families I don't keep in touch with. And that's tragic. These nonprofits that support these families, helping their kids get through school, helping them financially or whatever they need, therapy, whatever it is, I want to give that truck for them to raise money for those charities. I've already asked this. If there's somebody who knows Richard Rollins or Dennis Collins, formerly of Fast and Loud, and now they have their separate channels. I watched Dennis Collins' stuff. It's called The Coffee Walk, which is awesome on YouTube. If you guys know those guys, reach out to them and let them know that I'd love to have it sold through one of the auctions they recommend. I think Macomb, Barrett Jackson in Arizona. I'd love to work with those guys, to raise as much attention to the legends these men were that sacrificed it all, including the ambassador to Libya, Ambassador Stevens, who was killed as well that night. But I just want to bring more attention to these guys' legacy and memory and also raise money for a nonprofit to help. If you know anybody that can repair the truck, or if you know anybody who has connections with the auctions, Mike at thewolf21.com. It's Mike at thewolf, numerical 21.com. I appreciate you sending me an email. So guys, mobility, loadout, what does that even mean? So I don't care if you're a daily commuter, you use your vehicle to commute. I don't care if you don't even have a vehicle. Whatever your mobility platform is, a motorcycle, a bike, a vehicle, that's what's called your mobility rig, and you need a loadout. What's a loadout? Well, when I started doing this about 10 years ago, talking about loadout, it was hard to make a correlation between military experiences and what I knew was loadout for mobility, and then the civilian application. When I was in the military, I was in charge of mobility for several rotations. When you're in charge of mobility, you basically handle inspecting, making sure the vehicles are maintained, loading them out with bullets, which is typically ammunition in cans, making sure they had good tire pressure, they had oil changes, making sure they were topped off, because mobility was a huge responsibility in combat, in conflict, because it was our way in and our way out. And if we went into a mission or an operation and we broke down, which I've had happen, that is very dangerous. It puts us in harm's way when we're not prepared. If you go to operate the outdoors, outdoor recreation, overland, off-road, in the backcountry, and you're not thinking through the same process of preparedness for your mobility rig or whatever you use, that could be a huge mistake. It happens all the time. I talk about it years ago when Buffalo, New York had that huge snowstorm. Over a dozen people died in a small town. One gal died a couple blocks from her house because she pulled over and FaceTimed her family and said, "Hey, I'm stuck in the snow." And it was impossible for her to drive. So she kept the vehicle running and winded up dying of carbon monoxide poisoning inside the vehicle in America, in New York, a couple blocks from her home. So when we're not preparing for a potential contingency plan or for something to go wrong, and then we have a plan as a backup, we're making a mistake. So I'm going to line out for you guys the general principles of what I look for in loadout and what I think are the best vehicles for bugging out. I'll talk about that as well. The details of the education of this block I do on my Patreon. In fact, it's this week is Overland Mobility Operations, to include lining out what you need for your speedball. Now, a speedball for a civilian, I'll just save you the story arc. For my military experience, I made a speedball for a civilian, which is basically a 40 to 80 liter bag in capacity that has all the things that you need to defend yourself, which is an enhanced level of self-defense. Like the pew-pew in your waistband is going to get you pretty far. In a scenario where somebody asks you, "Give me your money," they're breaking in your house, sure, that pistol is going to do okay for you. But what do you do against an adversary that's more than one, multiple people with malice, deliberate intent to harm, right? An actual attack, a full-scale, very comprehensive attack. How are you going to defend yourself? Well, your pistol would be a disadvantage. We used to say a pistol is used to get to your rifle. I was going to say carbine, but it depends on what you carry. A pistol's use is to fight to your carbine to be able to upgrade your situation. Sure, 1,300 feet per second is great. What's better is double that velocity, more foot-pounds of energy, and more capability at distance with the rail space that you have. So speedball is packing out that bag with all the essentials to be able to survive something more complex, more enhanced, more dangerous. Like we have a loadout for a specific mission set. We get told, hey, this isn't the normal mission set. Everybody's a bad guy. Everybody has suicide vest. Everybody's trained in the Green Mountains of Libya. then that's something that we pay attention to. We kind of perk up. Oh, you mean we actually have to go to work? Like it's going to be an interesting one versus the low-level scumbag, the criminal, the low-level jihadist. We're talking about like guys that could fight. You need to be prepared for that fight. Not just a man-made disaster, but also a natural disaster as well. So I'll go through the details of that for my paid tiered subs on my Patreon. And it's, again, a way to support this channel if you're interested. Broadly talking, let's talk about loadout. What are the essentials? It's pretty easy. The first priority, and I've juggled these things around, the first priority I think you should have at all times is lumped into the 80% or 70% rule. Let's call it 70% rule. The 70% rule are staples of survival or staples of mobility. They never change. Okay, so let's go over first aid, for example. I just gave away a mobile trauma kit from the company that I founded, Fieldcraft Survival, for my patrons. I gave it away every 30 days I have a giveaway. I gave one of those things away. And it's a robust first aid kit. It doesn't just have Band-Aids and Bacitration, but it has things like SAM splints to immobilize an extremity, to isolate it, hold it in place when it's fractured. It has combat gauze or a coagulant that helps and facilitates the stopping of the bleed. It has cravats, which is cloth in order to help immobilize an injury, but also used as a contingency tourniquet. It has multiple tourniquets, not just 2, but 4. It has everything to stop the bleed, including bandages like Israeli bandages or compression bandages. It has nitrile gloves, not just one set, but several. The key to a first aid kit for your vehicle is, one, in your vehicle is likely the most dangerous thing that you're going to do throughout your day. Sitting in a cubicle or sitting at your workplace is not going to be dangerous unless you do a dangerous job. Sitting in your vehicle, statistically, is more dangerous than, for example, getting on an airplane, traveling even abroad in an airplane. You're more likely to be killed in your vehicle in an accident or be involved in something, the breaking down of that vehicle, right? In the backcountry, that would be worst case. The breaking down of the vehicle on the side of the highway, and now you're dealing with traffic. The vehicle accident. The civil unrest, the protest that you run into that turns into a riot. The mugging or carjacking. The road rager. I mean, I can go on and on and on. You take that on top of the environmental factors like snow, storms, things that are going to make it more dangerous to drive, and you're looking at the most dangerous place that you could be. So statistical probability is high on our list of not just being a radical prepper, but being reasonable, logical. Like, hey, like this, there's a statistical probability I might be in an accident or come across an accident, and I need to be prepared. So a mobile trauma kit, which I recommend going to fieldcraftsurvival.com to pick up a mobile trauma kit, is one of the things that you must carry in your vehicle. Now, here's a point that I want to drive home for you guys that I will be talking about further on my Patreon as far as like the way to set it up. You need ready access to that first aid kit. If you have a first aid kit in a big Molly 72-hour bug out bag, well, yeah, that goes in the back of your vehicle. But what do you do when you need to readily access that because you're upside down, hanging from your seatbelt, trying to survive? You need to be able to reach within arm's reach, your glove box, center console, your headrest, your visor behind your seat, which I prefer because we have solutions for that at Fieldcraft Survival. But you need to have ready access to that gear. Even if you're coming across an accident, you don't want to have to come out of the vehicle, unlock your trunk, go through your stuff to access it. Again, within arm's reach. I don't care if you stow it underneath the seat. Make sure it's secure and make sure you could access it. Also, make sure you could displace from your vehicle. I see a lot of people using Molly, which Molly is the way to tether nylon through it and weave it through to attach it. So you would take a first aid pouch, tie it to a Molly panel on the passenger seat. Well, that's not going to help you because you need to be able to move to the casualty when this stuff happens. And you need to be able to remove the bag, remove the pouch, and sit next to the casualty and deal with them and treat them, okay? So first aid is key. Again, I lined out kind of the essentials of what you must have. If you have a family of 4, you need to think, what can I carry that is covering down on everybody in the vehicle? Your worst case in a vehicle accident is a mass casualty where you roll your vehicle and everybody in your vehicle is injured. And you need to be trained on it, and so do your children, and so does your spouse. So does your friend, your girlfriend. Whoever you roll with needs to be cross-trained because they might be treating you to save your life. They might be running to the vehicle to get the first aid kit, and if they don't know anything about it, well, they're a liability. Remember, there's 2 types of people in the world, assets and liabilities. Be an asset. Be an asset. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is defense. Now, I prioritize first aid over defense because of statistical probability. It's more likely that you're going to be in an accident of some kind, even in the backcountry, overlanding and off-roading, than you're likely to be in a gunfight from your vehicle. But we must be prepared. And at the top of our hierarchy of preparedness needs, I would always put security at the top. In the case of survival, first aid, and defense, I kind of shuffle the deck a little bit for mobility because of statistical probability. But it's just as equally as important to carry and to be prepared in your vehicle. Now, the default for us is to think that the pistol in the waistband is the pistol on the nightstand, is the pistol in the center console, the glove box, or in your waistband when you're in the vehicle. That would be wrong. Why? 3 different distinct environments that have different requirements. Different environments require different requirements. So if I was going in an operation and it was a sniper op, I would bring my sniper rifle weapon system. It would be 308 gas gun and SR-25. It might be a 300 Win Mag, a Mark 13. But I would bring that and all the appropriate ammo, optic mounted gear, Kestrel, ballistic calculator integrated into the Kestrel, shooting sock, maybe a tripod, maybe a pole to hold up the weapon system, a whole bunch of things that I'm not typically going to bring if I was just doing a direct action raid. So you have different kit for different considerations. When you look at vehicle defense, it is a very different situation. I want you to think about something. Defending your life in a vehicle is nearly the worst case scenario. It would be like me putting you in a chair inside your home, right? And then turning yourself away from the front door. So you're maybe facing the back door. And then strapping you to the chair. And then saying, here's the rules. You can't leave the chair. You can only shoot from the chair. And I'm going to put a whole bunch of furniture around you. Just like you would have A-pillars, windshield, dashboard, steering wheel, potential passenger, the driver's side door surrounding you. And then you have to defend yourself when somebody kicks in your front door. Very difficult, right? You're at a huge disadvantage in being in a gunfight inside of a vehicle. The best advantage you have is the fact that it's a vehicle. You could bug out. You could move away from where you're at, okay? So when we look at those considerations, I also think about how I defend my life. Well, if your window's rolled down, you really only have one section of the vehicle that's unobstructed, unless you get out of the vehicle, obviously. But even then, when you get out of the vehicle and you stand to the left of it, you have a huge obstacle to the right. What I mean is you have a lot of obstacles around you, which means if you do what these police officers are doing on these officer-involved shooting videos where they're shooting their pistol through their windshield and they don't know or understand external and terminal ballistics, you would be making a mistake. Because a round from a 9 mil, this is the standard deviation that I see every class that has to do with vehicle defense. When you shoot a pistol round, 124 grain through a 9 mil, 124 grain, through a windshield that has two pieces of glass that nowadays are chemically treated with laminate or plastic, like a petroleum material, to hold it together in between that reinforces it, you have a huge obstruction that deviates the round via your point of aim. So you have a point of aim, and then you're going to have a different point of impact. So then the natural question would be, well, Mike, what's the hold? What's my adjustment? And I will tell you, it depends. And there's so many variables that you can't calculate it in real time. Here's some of the variables. Distance of barrel to the windshield. Angle perpendicular to the windshield. Distance of your gun or distance of the target from the other side of the windshield. That's a consideration. Because if the person's at the front of the hood, right in front of the bumper, and then they back up 10 feet, that could be the difference between a miss or a hit, or in this case, a hit or a miss. What is the deviation? I've seen it as little as a couple inches, and I've seen it as broad as a couple feet. Guys, let me make this very clear. If there's a man standing, for example, in front of your vehicle at your bumper, you pull your pistol, because he pulls his pistol, and you shoot through your windshield. That first round that goes through that windshield is going to deviate if you're holding center mass over his head. This is not theory. I teach this. I've taught this 100 times to law enforcement and civilians, and it happens every single time. It will happen every time with 9 mil. You know what it won't happen with? A 9-inch barrel, 300 blackout. And people are like, why would I ever carry 300 blackout? Dude, I'm not going to debate you. If you don't want to carry 300 blackout, don't. But what I'm telling you is, when your wife's in a gunfight protecting your children because she went to Costco and some guy is getting out of his vehicle and pulling a gun on her, and she pulls out that 300 blackout and she mag dumps that dude from the windshield because she's trained with that red dot on him, then you'll thank me. Or you'll thank yourself for making the decision and training her. But when she pulls out that 9 mil thinking that she's going to be able to defend herself, and she hits that windshield and that round deviates and kills, just like in the Salt Lake City protest, an innocent person, and she's facing manslaughter, that's what I'm putting out. I also want you to understand, if you're in a gunfight inside your vehicle or in the vicinity of vehicles, you want a power factor, you want a caliber, you want foot-pounds of energy and muzzle velocity and feet per second, that all can navigate obstacles because that's what you're fighting around. People aren't going to get displaced from the vehicle, stand in the open like a bad guy, and go, here I am. You might have to shoot into vehicles. And if you have, again, a pistol, where I see in a lot of these cases, these police officers they have no choice, but they're shooting through the windshield from the outside in. Massive deviation. And that windshield slows that round so aggressively, it's very hard to take out a person with pistol rounds, 9 mil 40-45, through obstacles to include side glass, front glass, and other obstacles to include sheet metal and brackets that are in the doors. So I want you to think about that for self-defense. 300 blackout is a truck gun. If I'm doing home defense, man, I'm going to have the most robust setup possible. Lastly, because I'm going to do 2 parts of this series, guys. Lastly, I do want to speak on self-defense considerations for how you would carry or how you would set it up. This is often asked on my Patreon. I just did a video with an airsoft gun. I don't like using real guns to demonstrate. So I have a BCM that doesn't collapse like my 300 blackout does. I recommend having a collapsible AR pistol. Either a law tactical folder that folds over onto the upper and lower, or something retractable or just a tube, but something that's more low vis or smaller in form factor. You obviously don't want a large form factor 16-inch rifle. And also, your 9-inch barrel is enough barrel length to get enough rotational mass to push that through for 300 blackout. Just so we're clear, because you're probably asking yourself, why'd you say 9 inches versus having a 6-inch 300 blackout? You need enough rotation in those lands and grooves to hold on to that round to maximize its terminal and external ballistic effects. So what I would recommend is having that in your speedball, either a 40 liter or an 80 liter. Now you can get a North Face bag, a JanSport, I don't care what you get, but it needs to be a minimum of 40 liters because that's enough room and capacity and space to carry a folded down 300 blackout. Now I put my speedball right behind the center console, right on the ground where I have ready access to it. So if I have to grab that bag and bug out, let me give you the perfect scenario here, and we'll close it out with this. In my carbine classes, I always ask the students, I say, hey guys, if you were in a situation where you had to move towards your school because you heard gunshots, and I'm being real with you guys. For those of you who are going, I would never do that. That's irresponsible. You need to get out of the way of law enforcement. Then either you don't have kids or you don't have near the capability to be able to do it on your own, or I'll give you a third option. C is you just don't know how it works, okay? If there's a scenario where you dropped off your kid and you're driving away from that school and you hear gunshots and you're in gridlock traffic, I always ask my students, you're a quarter of the mile down the road, locked in gridlock traffic. There is no school resource officer, or maybe there is and you know who they are, and you have a 300 blackout or AR platform inside your vehicle, or hell, pistol in the waistband. How fast are you moving towards the school to go rescue your kid? Well, the question is, one, are you going to rescue your kid? And always it's yes. Some people say no because they say, well, I want to get out of the way of law enforcement. Well, guess what, guys? Uvalde is the perfect example of how things can play out. I'm not taking a chance. I have the capability. I'm going to my kid's school and I'm going to rescue them. And no offense, but I'm more skilled than a patrol officer out of the academy or even seasoned law enforcement officers when it comes to that particular skill set. And it doesn't even matter. I'm not debating anybody because I don't care who you are. If you get in my way, I'm going to deal with you as well. Nobody is going to stop me from going in deliberately and calculated to rescue my children or rescue children, period, and eliminate the threat. Now, I say that confidently because I have the skill set. If you say that emotionally, then there's a problem. Because when I ask people if they have the skill set and they say, well, I don't have the skill set. So I say, well, what would you do? What speed would you run towards the school? And most of them say as fast as humanly possible. And I say, okay, that's kind of a mistake. Let's talk about that. And they're like, well, what do you mean that's a mistake? What do you mean that's a mistake? Well, it's a mistake because if you're saying you're going to run as fast as possible, that implies when you hit the front door, you're going to be gassed, expelled of all energy. And if that's the case, you will definitely make mistakes on target. You will miss. You won't be able to take the shot. You won't be able to make decisions rapidly and clearly. And so you'll make a mistake. I say that because that's part of a significant part of the conversation. But as it relates to speedball, what's also significant, you pull an AR out of the trunk of your vehicle and you start running towards a school, there's going to be other dads who think you're the bad guy. But if you have a speedball and you put it on your back, let's say you're in civil unrest and you have to break contact from your vehicle and you have to strong point into a building and you put on a backpack and you run out of your vehicle, people aren't going, what's that dude have that backpack on for? Oh, he's got a bomb in the backpack. They're not saying any of that. And so if you get a backpack and you're moving towards the school, you could do so clandestinely, move into a position where maybe you're offset of the door or even breaching in the door, go in the first classroom, then get your kit ready and then go to work. And what your speedball has all the capability to do just that against enhanced threats. That speedball is going to be readily accessible in my vehicle. There are other techniques which we'll get into next episode, and I have to do the part 2 of this because I have to tell you the coolest part is we're doing a whole mobility build with a Land Cruiser, and I'm going to show you how to do it on my patreon.com/Mike Glover. Guys, I appreciate you. Thanks for coming to the Mike Force podcast. If you're on YouTube, make sure you listen to it on Spotify. You can watch it there as well. And if you're on Spotify, make sure you sub to the YouTube channel, the Mike Force podcast. Till next time, peace out, guys.